Symphonies, like all other great art forms, are combinations of many moods, many inspirations. There are symphonies that offer gentle reflections on the world of nature and the environment. There are symphonies that pose great challenges to the human spirit. There are symphonies that evoke dreams of a life that can be, a world that is possible, a universe that we can define for ourselves. Welcome to Bonifacio High Street Central, a symphony for working, playing, and living. Reflected in a series of pavilions gently rolling with the landscape, in water plazas that evoke oases of tender calm, in surprising gardens that link concrete spaces, creating collages of verdant green and cool modern grays. In creative office suites where the full scope of human achievement is possible. In leisure spaces where dining becomes an experience to be truly savored and remembered. Where shopping is devoid of hassle and pressure to become a heightened experience different from our ordinary concept of malling. In such a symphony, in such an environment, anything wonderful, everything vital and joyous and life-affirming is possible. Such an environment allows one to work, to play, to bond, to reflect, to simply watch the world go by, or commune with friends, families, and colleagues. Just as the best symphonies allow us to aspire to be the best that we can be, this singular concept of space allows us that same privilege. Welcome to Bonifacio High Street Central, a symphony for working, playing, and living.
For almost 2 decades, Ferdinand Marcos ruled the Philippines with an iron fist. The only man who could challenge the dictator, Senator Benigno Aquino Jr., had been living in exile in the United States for 3 years. But in 1983, Aquino decided it was time to come home.
We were all expecting, well, now we're going to have something. I mean, somebody's going to come and lead us out, like Moses out of the, out towards the promised land, out of Egypt.
My feeling is we all have to die sometime. If it's my fate to die by an assassin's bullet, so be it.
Minutes after landing on Philippine soil, Benigno Aquino Jr. was shot and killed by a lone gunman.
There's pretty good evidence that Marcos himself was involved.
Marcos was very smart. He did not have to kill to defeat his enemy. I think this is a perfect crime.
Nearly 3 decades after that fatal shot, there are still more questions than answers. And the biggest one still remains. Who killed Benigno Aquino Jr.? For one day in February of 1986, the Philippines had 2 presidents. Ferdinand Marcos, the dictator who has held the presidency for nearly 2 decades, and a plain housewife, Cory Aquino.
My main occupation was to be a good wife and mother, and I really devoted all of my time practically to my children.
But Cory was thrust into the limelight after the assassination of her husband, opposition leader Ninoy Aquino.
When Ninoy was shot, I guess the feeling was enough.
Remember, before that, it was really just Ninoy. Cory was absolutely obscure.
In just 3 short years, Corazon Aquino would complete her transformation from shy, ordinary housewife to grieving widow to the leader who would bring down the iron rule of President Ferdinand Marcos, finishing her term as the most beloved president in Philippine history. For more than 2 decades, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos was America's man in the Far East. Charismatic and articulate, Marcos was the face of development and democracy in Southeast Asia.
There is a joke in Ilocos Norte that by the time he was 16 years old, he already had a cabinet in his head.
He provided the direction and people followed. He had the charisma to do that. People believed in him because he was brilliant.
But to retain his hold on power, Marcos had tightened his grip on his own people. He cracked down on the political opposition and suspended civil liberties, and resorted to violence and intimidation to keep his enemies in check.
The torture cases were very bad, but I don't know if you compare the pain of that with the family of the disappeared, who to this day, they've never found their loved ones.
Millions of people sank into poverty, even as the Marcoses salted millions of dollars out of the country.
You have private planes, you can load the plane with gold, with dollars, with everything, send it to Hong Kong. Who's going to stop you? Who's going to stop the president of the Philippines?
What happened to the man who held so much promise at the start of his term? And what had to be done to keep Asia's former showcase of democracy from spiraling out of control? October 2001 marked the birth of a new industry. The Malampaya Deepwater Gas-to-Power project was set in motion, and the Philippines became a commercial natural gas producer. This is an economic milestone for a country burdened by oil imports and major power shortages. Malampaya was a groundbreaking industrial project and a big step towards energy independence. It is the first in the country to use state-of-the-art deepwater technology to harness natural gas from beneath these waters in a remote location off the coast of Palawan. From some of the world's deepest subsea wells, natural gas was tapped, then transported through an underwater pipeline more than 500 kilometers away to this gas plant in Batangas. The year after its inauguration, in 2002, Malampaya was accorded the World Summit Business Award for Sustainable Development, a joint recognition from the UN Environmental Program and the International Chamber of Commerce. Using the world's cleanest and most efficient fossil fuel with minimal emissions, Malampaya now supplies 40 to 45% of Luzon's power needs.